Workers were trapped underground, time was running out, no one had answers until a quiet woman stood up and said, "Give me 5 minutes alone with the map." She was just the temp, a single mom. But what she did next would save lives and rescue a $150 million project. The wind howled outside the command trailer, sweeping dust and tension through the cracks of the aluminum walls. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Hot coffee cooling untouched on the corner of the planning table, digital displays blinking red, and satellite feeds flickering with live seismic data. CEO Ryan Hale stood at the center, tall and commanding, his shirt rolled to the elbows, his voice sharp and urgent into a satellite phone. "No, I do not care how far the backup team is. I have men underground and water rising from the eastern shaft. If we do not move now, we could lose lives. Do you understand what I am saying?" Around him, engineers and executives spoke in hushed, panicked tones, flipping through printouts, gesturing at topographic overlays and crisis models. On one screen, live drone footage showed twisted rock and fractured terrain near the base of the mining site. Somewhere in that chaos, 4 crew members were trapped with limited oxygen, and time was bleeding out fast. The room pulsed with decisions made too late. A rescue attempt had already been delayed once due to shifting rock patterns. Another delay could be fatal. Then, amid the static and storm, came a voice no one expected. "Give me 5 minutes alone with the map." The room fell silent. Ryan turned, his brow furrowed. So did everyone else. There, standing near the rear supply shelf with a clipboard hugged to her chest, was Lena Brooks. Petite, composed, and almost invisible until that moment, she wore a gray utility jacket, her long brown hair tied back in a no-nonsense bun. She looked out of place among the polished boots and branded field vests. But her gaze was unwavering. Someone scoffed quietly. "She's the temp paperwork lady." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "What did you say?" Lena stepped forward, calmly, no tremble in her voice. "I said I need 5 minutes. Alone, with the topographic map and current feed data." More silence. A bead of sweat rolled down an executive's cheek. The live feed pulsed again, seismic activity ticking upward. Ryan studied her. She did not flinch. Finally he said, "Why?" Lena replied, steady as stone, "Because no one in this room is seeing what I see." And just like that, the room shifted. The storm outside howled louder, as if echoing the change in air pressure within the trailer. The men in suits and helmets stepped back, uncertain. Lena walked to the center, rolled up her sleeves, and faced the giant projection of the region's terrain. The clock was ticking, lives were on the line, and the most unlikely person in the room had just taken charge. Before she stood in a high-stakes command trailer facing executives and blinking red data screens, Lena Brooks was just another woman on a rusted bicycle, pedaling through a quiet neighborhood at dawn. She lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in the Edge district of a small Colorado town. The paint on the stairwell walls peeled, the windows whistled on windy nights, and the water heater had a personality of its own. But for Lena and her 8-year-old son Theo, it was home. Every morning followed the same ritual. Lena would wake first, pack a lunch for Theo, and always slip a handwritten note into his lunchbox. It was never just "have a nice day." It might say, "Operation Marshmallow, deploy snack at 1200 hours. Mission, sweet success." Or, "Code word, giggle. Use it in a sentence today and earn a cookie." Theo, bright-eyed and full of questions, would greet her with an explosion of curiosity. "Do ants dream? Why does lightning zigzag? Are maps just the Earth's diary?" Lena answered every question like it mattered, because to her, it did. To the outside world, she was a quiet single mother with a polite smile and second-hand clothes that somehow still looked elegant. Her beauty was not loud. It was the kind of beauty that snuck up on you. The way her eyes stayed locked when she listened, how her laughter arrived unexpectedly, low and musical, and how her presence made silence feel comforting instead of empty. But that simplicity concealed a past no one in town knew. Years ago, Lena Brooks had worn a different kind of uniform. Not aprons and clipboards, but tactical boots and a government clearance badge. She was a geospatial analyst for a classified military division, one of the youngest ever recruited. Her mind could read landscapes like novels, spotting threats in inches, planning rescue routes in topography no one else could decipher. Until it all went wrong. There was a mission, a misread pattern, a storm. The call to pull out came too late, and someone she loved, someone she had once dreamed of building a life with, never came back. Lena resigned, disappeared, moved away with a baby, and never spoke of it again. Instead, she became the single mom who delivers dry humor at checkout lines, or the quiet woman at the back of the town hall meeting. She filled her life with little joys, spaghetti nights with too much garlic, sidewalk chalk obstacle courses, bedtime stories Theo rewrote on the fly. They had very little, but Theo never noticed. In his eyes, his mom was a magician who could make a single slice of pizza feel like a royal feast. Still, money ran tight. Her last remote freelance gig was canceled suddenly when the company folded. Bills piled up, the rent notice turned pink. That was when her old friend Sandra, a project coordinator at Hale Minerals, called with a favor. It is a temp job, data entry, logistics support at the field site. Not glamorous, but fast pay. Lena accepted immediately. She never told Sandra she already knew more about that mining region than most of the people working on it, that she had once built simulation models for terrain like it, identifying mineral patterns from heat readings no one else could interpret. She showed up on her first day with coffee in one hand and a mechanical pencil in the other. She filed invoices, she cataloged shipments, she blended into the background. Because Lena Brooks had become very good at hiding in plain sight. Until the day a voice inside her would no longer stay quiet. Until the moment she saw a team of trained professionals miss the most obvious detail on a topographic map and realized that silence would cost lives. She had walked into the trailer that morning ready to deliver spreadsheets. But now she was walking toward the map. And towards something else she had not faced in years. Herself. The morning had turned to midday, but no one in the command trailer had eaten. The air reeked of sweat and machine oil. Red indicators blinked on multiple monitors, casting a low pulse across the tension-filled space. Every conversation was clipped. Every sentence was a calculation of risk and pressure. An emergency alert had arrived less than 30 minutes ago. A section of the mine, specifically Tunnel C12, had suffered a sudden collapse. Dust sensors had triggered first, then vibration monitors, then pressure loss alarms. The collapse was deep, cutting off 3 underground workers positioned near a midline extraction point. Communication had dropped. Emergency response drones were sent down, but the terrain was unstable. Cracks in the rock were widening with every passing second. One more tremor and the entire lower eastern quadrant of the site could go. The situation was critical. No one was speaking in future tenses anymore. Everything was now. CEO Ryan Hale stood at the head of the room, staring at a live seismic feed and a color-coded underground model rendered on a wall-length screen. The color orange had already turned to red. "Shut down shaft access B entirely," he barked, pacing. "I do not care if it delays processing. We do not send another man in until I know no one else dies." His sharp, steel-gray eyes flicked to the field manager. "And where is the updated terrain pull? I asked for it 10 minutes ago." "They are recalibrating now," the manager said breathlessly. "Satfeed had interference." "Fix it," Ryan snapped. Tension whipped across the trailer like a live wire. Engineers whispered urgently in corners. A risk consultant from the investors group whispered into a phone behind tinted glasses. "If this turns catastrophic, our funding's gone," he muttered. "We will be pulled out of all Western Basin assets immediately." Ryan heard that too. He ran a hand through his thick dark hair, jaw tight. He had built this operation from the ground up. It had taken 6 years to secure the land rights, establish the environmental partnerships, and get clearance for expansion. Now, one event, one unpredictable disaster, could not only cost 3 human lives but destroy everything. Lena Brooks sat silently near the back, in a folding chair beside a cart of documents. She had no authority here, no title that mattered. Her badge read, Temporary Logistics. Her clipboard was filled with freight notes and transfer codes. But her eyes were locked on the big screen. The satellite map had been cycling between overlays, surface heat, geological formation, and ground moisture saturation. The toggles had been left on an auto-select loop. As Lena watched, something clicked in her memory. A faint discoloration, repeating along a contour line, caught her eye. Then another. She stood slowly. No one noticed at first. "Excuse me," she said, just above the hum of voices. No one turned. She tried again. "Excuse me, there is something wrong with that map." A few heads turned, one of them scoffing. "This is a closed strategic session. You need clearance to speak here." Lena did not back down. She pointed to the eastern wall, to a framed hard copy of the topographic map displayed earlier that morning. "Right there, near grid section F16. Those are not collapse trails, that is liquefaction spread." Someone narrowed their eyes. "What?" Ryan glanced over, his voice was tight. "And you are?" "Lena Brooks," she said calmly. "I manage inbound logistics, but I used to be a geospatial analyst." That made a few people freeze. Lena stepped toward the map. She took a dry erase marker from the tray, circled 3 points, and drew a triangle. "This formation pattern is not random. Your current path to the trapped workers is heading straight through what I believe is a latent fluid zone caused by undercompaction from years ago. If you drill through here," she drew an X, "you risk a full secondary collapse." "Then where do we go?" Ryan asked slowly. She drew a second triangle. "Tight, deliberate, steady, here. The rock has tighter bonds. It is closer to a 90-degree shear angle. You will get reverberations, but it will hold for long enough." The room fell utterly silent. A younger engineer leaned forward. "That was not in the model." Lena turned to face the room fully now, her tone clear. "Because the model is old. You are using base scans from 18 months ago and adding new data on top of distorted assumptions." Ryan stared at her. The live feed ticked upward again, 90 seconds to the next data ping. Then, slowly, Ryan looked at the lead drone operator. "Replot using her coordinates," he said. The man hesitated. "I said do it." Lena exhaled quietly as the room burst into motion. Outside, the sun broke briefly through the storm clouds. Inside, the most overlooked woman in the trailer had just become the only one who knew where to go. The command trailer emptied quickly, leaving Lena standing alone in front of the screen, the drone team setting up for her coordinates. The hum of the monitors pulsed behind her like a heartbeat, but inside her, everything was perfectly still. She uncapped a marker, stepped up to the topographic map with precision, and stared at it like it was an old friend hiding a painful secret. Her fingers hovered as she adjusted overlays, slope analysis, runoff indicators, and fault tension. Lena pulled one satellite capture from 4 years earlier and layered it with live readings. Then she paused. A microfissure, running just 20 meters south of the original route, blinked onto her radar. "How did no one see you?" she whispered, more to herself than to the room. Her eyes narrowed. The terrain was misleading. Rock coloration masking softness, runoff trails camouflaging drainage weakness. But if her hunch was right, a secondary route did exist. Narrow, elevated by just under 1 meter. Dry, stable. She circled it. Then, almost as an afterthought, she drew a curved line across the map. A subtle elevation dip that connected the path to an abandoned ventilation shaft. That shaft had been written off years ago due to rusted access, but Lena remembered something from the planning archives. Reinforced back paneling, one of the last old structures before new regulations came in. Her pen hesitated over the map, then moved again with certainty. "Pull feed from vent shaft B12, she called out, without raising her voice. A tech in the trailer doorway blinked. "It is not part of current assets." "It will be if you want your men back." There was silence, then the man tapped a few keys. A black and white feed appeared. The shaft was intact. Narrow, dusty, but intact. Peregrine Row. Nakath, Argith, Genul, Simon. Ryan returned just as the test drone launched. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, skeptical. "You better be right about this," he said, not looking at her. Lena did not turn. "I am not guessing, I am reading." The drone moved forward. His camera fed into the large wall screen. 1 meter of progress, then 5 meters, then 20. A corner approached. If her map was right, the corridor would expand here, just enough to allow human passage. If not, the drone turned. The corridor widened. Breath was held in every chest. The engineers clapped first. Then the field supervisor called out, "We have visual on the trapped crew. They are alive." Tears exploded in the trailer. The screen showed 3 figures waving through the dust, their reflective stripes visible, heads protected, arms moving. The responders at the surface began moving into position immediately, using the route Lena had discovered. It was working. Everyone celebrated, but not Ryan. He watched her. Lena stood off to the side again now, quiet, calm, as if nothing had changed, as if she had not just found the path to saving lives in under 5 minutes. Ryan crossed the room slowly, the buzz of celebration behind him. He stopped just beside her. "Who exactly are you?" he asked, voice low but intense. Lena glanced up. For a moment she said nothing, then she smiled. A slow, amused smile, like someone who knew more than she let on. "I'm just a single mom who likes maps." Ryan studied her, not buying it, but something in her confidence, her complete lack of fear, made him curious. And just like that, her words hung in the air, not as an excuse, but a quiet declaration. Outside, the first rescue vehicle began descending the paths she had drawn. Inside, Lena quietly recapped her marker, her hands steady, her mind already moving ahead. No one in that trailer would ever overlook her again. The following morning, the conference room at Hale Minerals buzzed with urgency, not of crisis this time, but of damage control. The rescue had made headlines. "Temp clerk saves mining operation," one article read. "Single mom's map miracle," another shouted. Social media buzzed with theories, admiration, and corporate skepticism. But inside the boardroom, the mood was far from celebratory. A group of sharply dressed men and women sat around a long steel table, screens lighting their faces with earnings charts and legal disclaimers. The chief counsel spoke first, tapping her nails against the tablet. "She is not certified to lead field decisions. If anything had gone wrong, we would be looking at class action lawsuits." Another voice, an investor from the East Coast, cut in. "This company is a 9-figure venture. We cannot be the story of a logistics temp leading tactical operations. That is not leadership. It is negligence." Ryan sat at the head of the table, silent. His eyes were distant. One executive, a younger man trying too hard to sound seasoned, chimed in. "We cannot reward this. Her success was lucky." Ryan's gaze lifted, his jaw tightened. "Luck?" he asked quietly. The room froze. The youngest investor, a woman in a navy pantsuit, added diplomatically, "We all saw the results, but the insurance implications alone—" "I know," Ryan said, cutting her off. "I know the implications." He stood, walked to the window. The desert stretched beyond the tinted glass. The site had resumed work. 3 lives had been saved. Operations were back on track. And yet, by that evening, the decision was made. Lena's temp contract would not be renewed. She was called in by a mid-level administrator. No one looked her in the eye. The language was apologetic but final. Lena took the news with the same grace she always carried. She nodded once, gave a soft "thank you" for the opportunity, and packed her things. She walked out of the trailer into the fading sunset, her shadow long against the gravel. No one clapped this time. No one even noticed. At home, Theo was on the floor with Lego bricks arranged like a rescue scene. "Did you save the day again today, Mom?" he asked, looking up with bright eyes. Lena crouched beside him and gave a crooked grin. "No cape this time. But I did rescue a leftover donut from the staff fridge. Hero level, sugar rush." Theo laughed. "You always win, Mom." He tousled his hair and smiled. But later that night, as he slept curled beside a stuffed giraffe, Lena sat on the couch, still in her work boots, staring at the ceiling. Meanwhile, Ryan stayed late at headquarters. He could not sleep. He asked his assistant to pull security footage, not of the field site, but from inside the command trailer. He watched the moment when Lena stepped to the map, how she layered satellite data, how her hands did not tremble once, how she traced the lines like someone remembering, not guessing. Her body language did not say, "Maybe this will work." It said, "This will work." He leaned closer. Then he watched again, this time watching her after the save. The way she stepped back, the way she minimized her presence. She was not angling for credit. She was trying to disappear. That was not luck. That was someone trained to be invisible, and choosing not to be, only when lives were at stake. Ryan sat back in his chair. He no longer trusted the room of voices from earlier, because what he had seen in her eyes was not luck, ambition, or chance. It was knowledge, and pain, and something else. Duty. The storm came without warning. What began as a steady wind shifted into something harsher, gusts beating against scaffolding, blowing grit into the eyes of field engineers and radar technicians. Then came the rumble, not from the sky, but from the ground. Ryan Hale was mid-briefing with structural leads when the alarm blared across the compound. Groundwater breach, northern rock shelf destabilizing, foundation flooding in 27 minutes. The words sliced through the air like a blade. A junior engineer sprinted in, mud on his boots, panic in his eyes. "Sir, it is worse than last time. We cannot control the subgrade seep. Drainage is backing into the lower shafts. If the pressure tipped that granite plate, the whole base will collapse." Ryan's mind raced. They had less than half an hour before the site turned into a liquid tomb. No simulation covered this anomaly. No protocol could outpace Mother Nature in this mood. He looked at the whiteboard, blank. Looked at the drone feed, flickering with static and confusion. But he made a decision. "Get me Lena Brooks, now." "Sir, she's no longer—" "I said call her." 36 minutes later, an old SUV pulled up to the perimeter checkpoint. Lena stepped out, wearing faded jeans, a navy rain jacket, and hiking boots that had seen better days. Theo clambered out beside her, his backpack bouncing. In his small hand, he clutched a folded piece of crayon paper. "You got this, Mom," he whispered, pressing the drawing into her hand. A smiling dinosaur gave a thumbs up in green marker. "His name is Diggy, and he believes in you." Lena smiled, kissed the top of Theo's curls, and jogged toward the chaos. When she entered the command trailer, the room went still. She moved straight to the topographic screens. No greetings, no explanations. She just grabbed a dry erase marker and began plotting. Ryan moved next to her. 23 minutes left, he said. "I will need drone depth reads every 3 minutes. And someone pull last year's satellite overlays. The terrain remembers things we forget." Engineers scrambled. Data flowed. One geologist handed her a tablet with sloshing gradient models. She glanced at it once and made a sweeping motion over the terrain map. "Here, the flood path is following a memory groove from an old stream bed. That cut line is not natural, it is historical erosion. If we redirect pressure along this southeast trench, we can buy time, 2 hours, maybe more." "No one has ever mentioned a southeast trench," a voice muttered. That is because you were looking at current layers, Lena replied. I look at what the Earth was before we got here. It was the quiet certainty in her voice that froze everyone. Ryan gave the order. Build the barrier, open the southeast drain. Within 10 minutes, trenches were being dug, sandbags lined the slope, and temporary rerouting pumps fired up. Mud surged down the channel Lena had marked. Tension hung in the air. Then, stillness. The flood had stopped. The site was dry. A slow clap came from the back of the room. It was Jensen, the grumpy senior engineer who had openly called Lena a liability only days ago. Well, he said, I'll be damned. More applause followed, cautious at first, then swelling. Even the most cynical minds in the room acknowledged what had just happened. Again, she had saved them. Theo peeked through the open door, waving his crayon dinosaur. Lena wiped a streak of mud from her brow, barely smiling. Ryan approached her quietly, his voice low. I do not know how you see what you see, but I am done pretending I do not. Lena folded the dinosaur drawing back into her pocket. Just a single mom who likes maps, remember? He looked at her longer than necessary, then smiled, softly this time. But behind his eyes, a thought stirred. Who exactly was she? Ryan Hale could not shake the feeling. There was something about the way Lena moved through data, like she was not analyzing it, but listening to it. Like she knew how the land breathed. She had saved the project twice. She had saved lives. And yet, she still walked through the site with her head slightly lowered, as if apologizing for being extraordinary. Late one night, in his temporary field office lit only by a single desk lamp and the glow of a satellite feed, Ryan opened her employment file. It was thin. Too thin. No mention of college. No former employers beyond minor freelance logistics work. A handful of temporary jobs, all entry-level. No social media, no digital footprint. It was as if Lena Brooks had been erased, or had erased herself. He picked up the phone and called a friend in military security. Off the record, Ryan said. Can you run a deep check on someone? The next morning, his friend called back, voice low. You are not going to believe this. Lena Brooks had once been Captain Alina Bradford, one of the youngest lead geospatial analysts in U.S. Defense Command. She had been deployed overseas and credited with identifying the exact satellite pattern that saved a joint base from a coordinated strike. Dozens of lives had been spared. She was honored quietly, classified heavily. But in that same mission, her husband, a decorated Army engineer, had been killed during evacuation. She left the military 6 months later, changed her last name, vanished from the grid. She had not wanted medals. She had wanted peace. Ryan stared at the printed dossier, his throat dry. She had walked into his project wearing a raincoat and a backpack full of peanut butter sandwiches, and he had dismissed her as a temp clerk. She was not just smart. She was battle-tested brilliant, a woman who had once mapped risk under enemy fire, and now calmly rerouted mining floods in borrowed boots. Ryan's longtime friend and operations lead Ben leaned over his shoulder, reading silently. Ben was the kind of man who could charm his way out of a rock slide with just sarcasm and a stapler, but even he was speechless for a moment. Finally, Ben said, "She is not just smart." He leaned back, slowly shaking his head. She is a damn legend. Ryan exhaled, something shifting in his chest. He thought about the way Lena had carried herself, not proudly, but with quiet dignity. How she always let others take credit, how she never corrected anyone when they assumed she was just the paperwork girl. And suddenly, her quiet sadness made sense. The way she smiled at Theo like he was her whole world. The way she worked late but never asked for extra pay. The way she avoided praise like it might break her. He folded the file. It was never about recognition for her. It was about doing what needed to be done and protecting the ones she loved. And for the first time, Ryan realized he had not just underestimated her mind, He had overlooked her heart. The next morning, the command trailer buzzed with a different kind of energy. For the first time in weeks, the tension had eased. There was no shouting, no panic, no finger-pointing. Instead, the air felt charged with quiet anticipation, like the first light after a storm. Ryan Hale stood at the center of the room, holding a rolled-up blueprint under his arm. He looked rested for the first time in days, though his eyes still carried the weight of what he had learned. Then the door opened. Lena stepped in. She wore her usual practical clothes, cargo pants, steel-tube boots, hair in a loose braid. But today there was something different in the way she moved. Her steps were steady, her shoulders were square. She was no longer trying to disappear. She was ready to be seen. Ryan crossed the room and offered her the blueprint. "I do not want to just thank you," he said, voice calm. "I want to offer you a permanent position." There was a pause. People turned. "A real seat," he continued. "Not in logistics, in strategy. Your name on decisions, your voice in planning, equal to mine." Lena blinked. She had spent so long hiding, folding her brilliance into the background, and now, here he was, holding open the door she had locked herself behind for years. Before she could answer, Theo poked his head into the trailer from behind her legs. He held his sketchbook and grinned. "Does this mean my mom gets an office with a spinny chair?" Everyone laughed, even the engineers who once dismissed her. Ben leaned over from the corner, coffee in hand. "Only if she lets us ride the elevator with her now." Lena raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Only if you bring snacks." The room broke into warm chuckles. But then her expression softened. She looked at Ryan. "I accept," she said, voice low, "but on one condition." Ryan nodded. "Name it." "I work in the field," she said, "not behind glass. I do not need a corner office. I just need the ground under my boots and a map in my hand." Ryan smiled. "Done." The entire room erupted in applause. It was not the polite kind, it was not the obligatory kind, but it was real. From people who had seen what she could do, from men and women who had underestimated her and now stood in awe. Lena glanced down at Theo, who gave her a double thumbs up with both tiny hands, and whispered, "You are like Batman, but with maps." She laughed, a full, open laugh that turned heads, one that belonged to someone finally stepping out of the shadows. That night, when she walked through the base camp, people nodded, not out of obligation, but out of respect. Some even stood. She had earned her place, not through a title, not through a speech, but through action, grit, and a quiet kind of genius. And for the first time in years, Lena Brooks did not doubt her own worth. She felt it, clear as the sky after a desert rain. And so did everyone around her. 3 weeks later, the mining site did not look like a disaster zone anymore. It looked like something closer to a miracle in motion. The chaos was gone. In its place was something rare: smooth coordination, clear communication, progress, real, measurable progress. And at the heart of it all was Lena Brooks. She no longer lingered on the edges of meetings, she led them now. In khaki utility pants and a rolled-up topographic map tucked under her arm, Lena moved through the site with quiet authority. People stepped aside when she passed, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. She had become the mind everyone turned to when things got complicated, the calm in every storm. In one meeting, she recalculated excavation angles using elevation overlays and historical erosion data. The shift saved the company over $3 million in projected equipment wear. In another, she identified a terrain bluff previously thought too dangerous to cross. Using seismic modeling and natural contour flow, she proposed a new logistics route. Within 5 days, it became the main corridor, shaving transport time in half. But Lena did more than just math. She started something else, quietly, almost without announcement. In a small weekly meetup in the open hangar, marked only by a whiteboard and handwritten sign that read, "STEM Saturdays, Girls Who Map." Young girls from nearby desert towns began showing up, shy at first. Lena taught them how to read coordinates, how to translate patterns in nature, how to code simple maps. Theo helped, handing out notebooks and giving impromptu speeches titled things like, "Why My Mom is Cooler Than Batman." Ben brought donuts. Even some of the grizzled engineers began dropping in just to listen, then to offer pointers, and finally to volunteer. Ryan watched all of this from the command trailer, at first from a distance, then from the picnic table beside them, then, eventually, sitting cross-legged next to Theo on the hangar floor, holding a compass upside down while pretending not to need help. "You are holding it wrong," Theo whispered. Ryan grinned. "Maybe I am testing you." "You are not." Ryan laughed. It was not the clipped, professional laugh of a CEO trying to be polite. It was open, light, unrestrained, the kind of laugh that had not escaped him in years. Later, Ryan began joining them for lunch breaks, at first under the excuse of checking updates, then for no reason at all. One afternoon, Lena opened her cooler and pulled out 2 sandwiches. Ryan blinked. "You made one for me?" "No," she said dryly. "Theo did, but I improved it." He took a bite and winced. What is this spice?" "Confidence," she replied with a wink. He nearly choked, laughing. As the weeks unfolded, something quiet began to bloom between them. Not declared, not rushed, just small moments, side glances, shared smiles, inside jokes. When Lena adjusted her hard hat and raised one eyebrow at Ryan during a heated meeting, he almost forgot what he was arguing. When Ryan once absent-mindedly quoted one of Theo's dino facts during a press briefing, Lena watched from the back and smirked. He had changed, or maybe he had just remembered who he used to be, before everything became numbers and pressure. Before life got too heavy to enjoy. Lena had not just brought brilliance to his project. She had brought light. And Ryan Hale was not just noticing. He was hoping. The canyon glowed with golden light as the sun dipped behind the jagged ridges. Strings of fairy lights danced overhead, stretched from support beams to lantern poles. A soft breeze carried the smell of grilled vegetables, warm bread, and something sweet from the dessert table Theo had already investigated 3 times. The entire site looked transformed, from a rugged industrial base to something out of a dream. Folding chairs had been swapped for real linen, helmets hung from hooks, untouched for once. The evening marked the formal completion of Phase 1 of the mining project. But for everyone here, it was more than just a milestone. Ben raised a glass, his usual charm softened by something rare, sincerity. "To the woman who rewrote the map?" "Literally," he said, raising his eyebrows toward Lena. "And to Theo, who taught me that compasses are not just round rulers." Laughter rippled through the gathering. Lena blushed, trying to hide behind her glass, but it was no use. Then Ryan stood. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at her, and spoke from the kind of place few CEOs ever allow the world to see. There are moments that shift everything. Fault lines, they call them. Places where pressure builds, then transforms the landscape. He paused. Lena Brooks is that fault line. For this company, for this project, for me. The crowd fell silent. She saved more than the operation. She saved lives. She saved futures. And, though she does not know it, she saved me. Lena's breath caught. Ryan stepped forward, walking around the table, not rushed, not rehearsed. He reached her and gently extended his hand. "I know you never needed rescuing," he said, voice soft but steady. "You are the strongest person I know. But if you are open to it, I would love to walk beside you, wherever you are headed next, whatever trail you blaze, whatever map you redraw." Lena looked at him. Really looked. His eyes held no pretense now, just hope. She smiled, wide, radiant, vulnerable. "Only," she whispered, "if we let Theo draw the map." A small voice burst from the corner. "Only if it has dinosaurs and snack stops." Everyone laughed. Loud, real, deep laughter. Ben clinked his glass against Ryan's. Deal breaker if it doesn't. Ryan leaned in, kissed Lena's knuckles, then her forehead. And then, finally, he kissed her. It was not showy, it was not planned. It was slow, warm, full of gratitude and longing and relief, the kind of kiss that says, "This is what I was missing. This is where I belong." The crowd erupted into gentle applause and camera flashes, but for Lena, there was only the canyon wind, the scent of dust and lilacs, the sound of her son laughing nearby. She looked up to see Theo dancing under the string lights, pretending to guide imaginary construction trucks through his own invisible map. He was safe. He was joyful. And for the first time in a long time, so was she. Later, under the stars, with dessert plates abandoned and music playing low, Ryan whispered into her ear, "You still want to work from the field?" She nodded. "Always." He grinned. "Good, because wherever you are, that is where I want to build." And with that, they danced. No plans, no projections, just two people, both broken, both brave, finding home not in a place, but in each other. If this story touched your heart, if Lena, Theo, and Ryan reminded you of the quiet power of brilliance, resilience, and second chances, subscribe for more soul-stirring emotional stories. We read every single comment. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. Do you believe that one good map and one brave heart can still change the world? We believe it can, and we will keep sharing these heartwarming stories with you.